let's hear about openness from two leaders of the industry. You guys already know, Dean Takahashi here. Let's bring to the stage Tim Sweeney. He's founder and CEO of Epic Games, the company behind the Unreal Engine, as well as Epic games such as Gears of War, Unreal Tournament, Infinity Blade, and Fortnite. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tim Sweeney.
Thanks, Tim. Well, that talk with Robbie brought back some memories. I think I remember way back when you were suggesting to Microsoft rather publicly that they double the amount of memory in the Xbox 360 because it wasn't going to be enough if they only had 256 or something, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Right, we built an analysis showing side by side what the two cases would look like, and they did the right thing. It shows that Microsoft has an awesome capability for flexibility there I've seen several times over the past few decades that are just amazing. You know, that was $1 billion decision, and they were like, okay, it's right for developers, it's right for products, we'll do it.
So that's a little context for, I guess, the current status of things, I guess. You recently took on Microsoft publicly, again, criticizing the Universal Windows platform. What's this really about, I guess?
Well, Microsoft has been taking a series of steps for a while now towards closing down the Windows ecosystem, forcing at least consumer versions of Windows to go through Microsoft Commerce. You know, they can't do it all at once because there would be an industry uproar and people wouldn't buy the new operating system. But one little step at a time, they're trying to take it all over. UWP is one step in that direction. It's a more closed Windows subsystem that has some operating system features that are not available to normal apps. When Windows launched, it was closed. Now they've opened up parts of it, but there's no long-term future commitment. Yeah, and for a company like Epic, I've been copying floppy disks and sending them out in the mail to Epic customers for 25 years now, starting in 1991. The absolute most important thing for all of us in this room, I think, is our ability to have a direct relationship with our customers, to build a business and sell our products to them. And it would be the most ridiculous tragedy if the result of the digital distribution revolution were that Walmart and Best Buy and all these other giant retailers were replaced by Microsoft, Apple, and Valve. I think it's really critical that we fight to maintain the openness of the key platforms in our industry.
So Valve brought this up with Windows 8, I guess, right? That they were worried about Microsoft closing down a platform, and they started Steam machines, I guess. So this is kind of ringing a bell, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. But the problem with Linux, it's a fine operating system, but it lacks the billion consumers that Windows has. Windows is the platform of choice for hardcore gamers, and it's the only choice for enterprise. If we want to have open platforms there, we've got to fight to keep Windows open, and Linux is not a realistic fallback plan.
So you could have done this privately, I guess.
Well, I spent 18 months emailing, meeting, and badgering Microsoft executives, talking to them about this behind the scenes. And there are a lot of great people at Microsoft who share this idea that Windows should be open. But there are also some bean counters here and there, and they've been unable to make any sort of commitment to whether UWP will be open or closed.
Now, I went to Microsoft Build, and Microsoft made a point to invite me to that this year. And at least 3 executives, including the CEO, talked about openness, but it wasn't quite exactly what you're looking for.
Well, on stage at Build, Phil Spencer said that the Xbox is an open platform, which surprises me because you have to get your game concept approved before you can start developing it. And then you have to get every update approved. And Microsoft has absolute control. And guess what? You don't know who your customers are. It's sold, they sell it through their store, your game, and it's not your platform. And so I think they're just in propaganda mode at that point. We really have to look at, are the key mechanisms there for Windows to remain an open platform? And whenever Microsoft tries to impose some technology change on us, we should be very careful to defend our businesses, which rely on direct relationships.
Now, what has some of the reaction been like, as far as the range of reaction you've gotten to this? I heard some myself, but I wanted to hear what you've heard as well, I guess.
Well, a huge number of developers share this sentiment, but most of them do not want to take on a $400 billion corporation. I've been told it's a bad idea, like just FYI.
Yeah.
But everybody fears this, and what we're seeing right now is nobody's adopting UWP except for the small number of developers that Microsoft is paying to adopt UWP. And the same thing with the Windows Store in Windows 8.1. It's kind of a dump bin of ports of Android mobile games to Windows, what Microsoft paid for. If you search for GTA in the Windows Store, there's like this mobile GTA game. Like, where is GTA? It's the #1 game on the PC of all time, and it's not there.
I think some reaction I've heard is that you're kind of pointing out a subtle threat that could come in the future. And so technically, there's sort of not a universal reaction of you're right and they're wrong. Sort of, it's more, I don't exactly see what Tim is talking about sometimes. David Helgeson at Unity, he's a competitor. He doesn't have a reason to agree with you, but he did say that he favors openness, but he doesn't exactly see the crisis right now, I guess.
Well, there's a funny story about boiling a frog. If you throw and don't try this at home, I like frogs, but if you throw a frog in boiling water, he'll just top out. He's like, okay, this is boiling. But if you put him in warm water and you slowly ramp up the temperature, then he'll not notice, and he will be boiled. But a lot of frogs in the industry have already been boiled. Like, look at Facebook. Every brand in the world put their brand presence on Facebook, started sending out messages that their customers could receive. And then at some point, that kind of changed. Now you have to pay for your messages to be received by the people who chose to follow you. Boiling a frog. With Windows, now Microsoft has given itself the ability to force patch updates without your authorization. It will just update itself, and you can't do anything about it. So they can change the rules of the game at any time. They've already launched this operating system with UWP. They call it side loading now because it's like other stores are not official. They've already launched the operating system with that disabled. They force patched it to enabled. They say a lot of things about openness, but they want us to play this game with them by porting all of our apps to this new platform, and they are not telling us what the rules of the game are, and they're reserving the right to change the rules at any time. Well, I don't think they're going to change them to our favor. That's my fear here.
So I think you have every single platform maker in the room here. Wow. So I wonder, what is your message to them? Like, what do they need to know about openness, I guess?
Well, I would point out that the PC has been, as an open platform, has been the most vibrant platform in the world. The GPU revolution started there well before Microsoft adopted it. Remember, we had 3D effects with Glide and all of this innovation that Microsoft eventually rolled up into the platform through DirectX. But if that had relied on Microsoft initiative and Microsoft had actively blocked external drivers and apps supporting new things that they didn't approve, it never would have happened. The VR revolution, it's happening now. HTC Vive and Oculus. Well, there's no direct VR interface from Microsoft. If you were trying to make that work within the UWP ecosystem they're proposing, it would have never happened. So open platforms encourage innovation. And whenever you have a closed platform and a monopoly on commerce and all of these platform rules, it stifles it. I mean, look at what iOS has grown into. It's the
I was going to ask you about, if you feel this way about Microsoft, how do you feel about Apple?
Well, Apple's an awesome company, and they get a free ride from consumers because their platform is so great, and it's virus-free, and people tend to associate that with the fact that it is a walled garden. But I think the truth of the matter is Apple's OS has awesome security and sandboxing that ensures that an app you run cannot possibly turn itself into a virus. It's not the fact that they're forcing all commerce to go through their store that makes it secure. It's that OS design. And so that's a good thing. I think the closedness is bad, but what we have now is John Riccatello of Unity released a stat, which really amazed me. He said there were 400,000 Unity games being released in the past year. 400,000 games. But I don't think anybody who's not in the top 500 on iOS is able to run a business off of that. And so you have this closed platform. It has a top 20, and if you're not on the top 20, then your sales fall off very radically. So you have one app store, you have one model of publicizing apps, and I feel like it's failing a very large percentage of the developers out there. Whereas on Windows with Steam, that tail is much longer, and there are a much larger number of developers producing successful games. And the fall off from number 1 to number 2 and number 3 is not nearly as steep.
And they're not all paying their 30% to Apple, I guess, right? So.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's the other funny coincidence, you know, not a conspiracy, a coincidence that every store in the world charges 30%. Steam, iOS, Android, you know, all of them, 30% across the board. You'd think that this would be a parameter where people were trying to compete economically to make their platform more attractive or to be stingier, but we're not seeing any competition there whatsoever. Whereas if these were open platforms and there were more competitors, I think that would change.